This episode of Anxiety Slayer is sponsored by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try and save 10% on your first month at betterhelp.com/slayer. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/slayer. In this week's episode of the Anxiety Slayer podcast, we're talking about an important teaching from Ayurveda that highlights how our emotional well being impacts every aspect of our lives and why it should be our number one priority. Welcome back, Ananga.
Hey, Shen.
Good to be with you. And I'm grateful that we're having this conversation because emotional health is key to living a peaceful and joyful life for sure.
Yeah. When I first read that teaching, it really stayed with me. And it goes along with other teachings from Ayurveda that really emphasize this. Never mind what herbs you're taking, what you're eating. If our emotional health isn't strong and supported, then those things aren't as effective. More what we're doing than what we're taking is what's affecting our mental peace and our emotional well-being.
And sometimes we get overwhelmed by events around us and we feel more anxious. And the more anxious we feel, the more our sleep starts to suffer. And then things just kind of cascade from there.
Yeah, yeah. Especially for the ladies, I think we have this nighttime concerns. I read twice today from different people that I'm following. I was worried for the world in the night. Two people shared that. Two unrelated people
Hmm.
from different places in the world. You know, it was on their heart, it was on their mind, things that are going on that concern them. And they both then went on to share a very gentle process for how they got themselves in a more settled space, which I really appreciated. But yeah, sometimes we just feel very overwhelmed. There's stuff coming to our attention and it gets to our sleep. It can affect our digestion, affect our relationship with others. You know, it kind of leaches into everything. So I really appreciated both these women sharing how they took a deep breath, slowed down, and those natural, gentle steps to regain some peace and balance.
And if you allow yourself, there's peace and beauty all around us. There's kindness all around us. There are good things happening. And sometimes we get caught up in the current of all of the things that aren't necessarily so good, the darker side of the world. And oh my goodness, I'm so glad that you shared that because I find at night I have to be really careful not to go to that place where I'm also feeling the weight of the world and what's happening. And usually what I do is I'll lower my walls and barriers and then just send out, like expand my energy as far as I can possibly imagine and send love and contributions and sweetness to bodies and beings and whatever people need. It's not that I know what they need, but whatever it is that they might need. And there's some sweetness in knowing that I'm making that contribution from however I see it.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, and we see different traditions have practices like this. Right? In the Vedic tradition, there's a beautiful prayer for peace and the well-being of all. May all beings experience peace. We see this in Buddhism and different traditions. It's certainly a very compassionate thing to do.
Well, let's talk about Ayurveda's emphasis on emotional care and why it is so very important to our health and well-being.
One of the reasons is just purely because it robs us of mental peace when we're not in a good place emotionally. So Ayurveda's guidance is to reflect, to look at our patterns, the impressions running through our mind, and to slow down, turn to ourselves with compassion, and bring into place some simple practices that can help us feel more supported. Some breathing, journaling, reflecting, talking with people we love and trust, whatever it is, to just acknowledge kindly what's going on, not to stuff it down and bury it. not to push through, not to distract, because it just makes us rattle more, right? It just comes back and bites us harder.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about last week about that conditioning to just push ourselves and push
Yeah,
through or to suck it up or what have you, and that is just one of the worst things that you can do when you're already feeling overwhelmed and anxious.
yeah, definitely. So it helps to look at how we're going about things and simple things that can really help, taking a pause before we eat, keeping away from things that affect us negatively before we eat. If we sit down to eat the healthiest of meals and we're upset or anxious or angry, all our digestive energy is scattered outwards and diverted from the place it needs to be. We're not going to digest that meal well. We're not going to derive the nutrition from it. It's not going to go well for us.
Think about how many people eat their dinner in front of the TV watching the news.
Yeah.
Holy smokes, that's not
Yeah. Or grabbing and eating on the go. We really need to be present with our meals. So, it can be simple. Just take a moment, take some deep breaths and express gratitude and just settle ourselves before we start eating. And then to eat slowly and with gratitude. Ayurveda is very strong on this. And there's different quotes like you can eat all the kale in the world, but if you're not taking care of your emotional health, it's just not going to serve you well. Also, when we feel overwhelmed by what's going on around us, it can be helpful to really simplify our meals because our digestion's going to be stressed and taxed anyway. So, eating simply, simple meals and eating slowly and taking care before we settle to sleep, different check ins and self care things throughout the day to take the overwhelm down.
Hmm. I think often most of us don't even think about our digestion unless it starts acting up.
Yeah,
And if you give yourself the gift of this, just a little bit of extra time and mindfulness and really making each meal a, a place of gratitude, just a place of slowing down, giving thanks, and nourishing your body, and then getting back to whatever it is you need to get back to. We need to slow down.
yeah, we do in so many areas.
How do our emotional filters color everything in our world?
And this is something we're really seeing extremely at the moment is, we see everything through the lens of our own emotional experience. And then we think everyone else does too. But we don't. We're all individuals and we need to make room to listen to each other with curiosity and with patience. And this is where we see so much disagreement is that we think that my way of thinking is the way of thinking, and then we superimpose that on others. There's a teaching from the Vedas on this. Atmavan manyate jagat. Generally, everyone imagines that others think and feel the same way that they do.
Mhm.
Everyone thinks of others according to their own tendencies or predilections. So it's like a bias. We have that emotional bias for or against, and then we superimpose it on others.
Oh my goodness, there's demonstrations of that everywhere all the time, and especially now in the world when things seem to be a little nuts. People aren't hearing each other. They're not because they're looking through the lens of their own emotional filter.
Yeah. I was listening to somebody today that I very much admire, and she was saying, you can listen to others without agreeing with them. You don't have to agree, and you don't have to do what other people say, but you can listen. You can show respect, you can show curiosity, and then they go about their way and you go about yours. Nobody necessarily needs to change their mind, but they don't have to bash each other over the head.
Well, and you'll see that a lot on Facebook or Instagram or these places where somebody shares an opinion or an idea of something or other. And sometimes the feeding frenzy begins with all of these people chiming in with their different emotional responses. And sometimes it can get really ugly. You think, wow, how about you just read it and move past it? Why do you feel the need to add your point of view to somebody else who is sharing their point of view? They didn't ask you for your point of view. They were sharing their point of view.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing this like lowest common denominator of communication on social media, where that can happen on the most benign of sharings.
Oh my goodness, that's nuts.
Yeah. And another teaching from Ayurveda is that our negative emotions become addictive. We're addicted to them. So I think we all know that there are people that go on social media just looking to do that. They're actually there to be provocative and to have an argument. Whatever emotional patterns we're cultivating will snag us and become the programming that we run. It's the record we're playing. And again, this is where self examination is really taught in Ayurveda as a number one key for emotional well being. Have a look at your dialogue, have a look at the stories you're running. And one of my favorite psychologists, Edith Eger, says, you have your story and your story has you.
Mhm.
So we have this opportunity to review and revise our narrative. We have to be willing and we have to be open to doing things differently, looking at things differently. And it's not always easy, but it's certainly healthy.
Well, and the point is your old story isn't the only story. It just isn't. And so if you're living in that space of Groundhog Day of reliving, 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 uh, you're not doing yourself any favors or the people that you love or the people in your life. It's time for a new chapter. Turn the page, move on, do the work that needs to be done so that you can be in a much more accepting and kind space.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point. I remember you saying that to me years ago and it really affected me. Yeah, it's easy for us to, when we're not consciously directing our life, it's easy for us to fall into a victim mindset in our story. But we should be the protagonist of our story. We should be the hero, and we can always wield a pen and change how it's going to go from this point on. Whatever's happened before, from this point on, we get to write
Mhm.
what happens next. Okay, that's done. What now? Which always puts us in the place of power, of choice, and that's a much better place to be.
Yeah, because choice creates. Every choice you make creates something. And so why would we wanna stay in the same repetitive loop?
Yeah,
So it's an unconscious way of living, and it's just wow, there's just so much more for you by making a choice no matter what it is.
yeah. It's something to watch. I've noticed with my own journaling, I don't like it to feel like Groundhog Day, because I don't want to embed those impressions, embed those samskaras, which we can do. We can have Groundhog Day in our journal. So I'll tend to say what I feel I need to say and then throw it out and then find something better to say, something more helpful to say. But sometimes it does help to just acknowledge the bare facts of what's going on and then I'll see how I need to set my sails from there.
One of my favorite journaling prompts when I journal is, "What does my soul want me to know right now?"
Mm,
And then I just free write and get out of my way. You know, it's a sweet practice where I'll light a candle, get still, get my journal, and then just write, see what comes up.
I love that.
I enjoy it very much, and the more I do it, the more profound the messages are, of course. But, and then when I'm not doing that, the morning pages are helpful for, just writing 3 pages of whatever, doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah,
And also to be mindful that you aren't in that repetitive pattern every single day because that's not gonna be helpful for you. Get it out of your system, and then again, what will you choose?
I think that's the defining question for me. It's like, okay, move through it to what now? Sometimes it needs to be said, but then that's not where we're staying. To write through it and then let it take us to a better place. Just reminded me of, I read a book years ago. It really helped me at a very challenging time in my life, and it's called Writing Down Your Soul.
Mm, mhm.
It really helped me. So when you said that your journaling prompt is, "What does my soul want me to know right now?" I saw that book cover in my mind. It has an owl on it. It just came to my mind so clearly, and I remembered how much that book helped.
Yeah.
So yeah, whatever we feel helps. Walking and writing are the two classics.
As does talking with a trusted friend about whatever is on your heart, to be in that space of complete trust and safety, and to just let it out. And wow, what a gift that is, to have somebody reflect back or just hold space, or to know to ask you of, whether you want help solving something or whether you just want them to listen, or whatever it may be, that you can. And usually your good friends, they know you well enough to have seen the rich tapestry of your life. They know that you're not stuck in this one place forever. And sometimes when we are in a really overwhelming place, we can't see out of it, but our friends can. They know who we are, and they know that we're not that one that's suffering right now. We're so much more than that.
Yeah, and those tiny acts of kindness, of just hearing and being present, which you're so good at. I remember many years ago when I was seriously ill and waiting for surgery, and you kindly sent me a package, a care package, and you sent me a pebble and you wrote on it in with a marker pen, "This too shall pass." And I had that pebble by my bed for years.
I've forgotten all about that.
Yeah, I really liked having that by me. I think sometimes when we see a friend in distress, we feel like what we're offering isn't a lot, but it's when you're on the receiving end, it really is. It really is a lot just to have somebody hold space for you and hear you, and safety. I'm spending time with friends in some online Zoom groups at the moment where we really reflect and talk deeply together. And what's coming up again and again is safety. The safety of the group. What's said in the group stays in the group. And nobody judges. Nobody talks about you behind your back. And just the release and relief of that.
Getting together in Zoom groups, or getting together with circles of women, getting together with like-minded people, even once a month, it's so nourishing. It's so helpful to be in that safe container. As you know, I've been part of different women circles and groups now for years and years. And to just know that as soon as you step inside, that container is safe.
Yeah.
And if you haven't done it before and it's your first time doing it, it feels so foreign. And all of us listening to people and you're like, I'm not the only one. Or I thought I was crazy when I when I was feeling overwhelmed about this or that. Or all of a sudden you're a part of this community that of greater understanding of being human.
Yeah. To know that you're not alone, and to know that a lot of us are having, a heightened human experience, and not to turn on ourselves and think, what's wrong with me, or why am I so affected?
If you're navigating overwhelm, do everything you can to be sweet with yourself. And as Ananga said, this too shall pass. In the meantime, do what you know you need to do. Thank you, Ananga. And thanks to all for listening. If you're interested in becoming an Anxiety Slayer patron, you can join our Patreon with over 200 guided relaxations, tapping sessions, and classes to help you slay your anxiety. Visit patreon.com/anxietyslayer.